Today you guys are going to be working on Unit 4 CFA Review. Everyone should have this worksheet in front of them. Make sure you put your name, date, and period, or you can put your block number. So Unit 4, we learned about graphing lines, using slope and y-intercept, writing an equation, getting the slope and the y-intercept from a table, determining if a function is linear or nonlinear, and different ways that we call the slope, which was speed, the coefficient, learning the formula for slope, which was change in y over change in x, and knowing that the y-intercept is where x is 0, or if we're looking at a graph, it is where the line crosses the y-axis. So I'm going to go over a few problems with you, and the rest of the problems are going to be your classwork. You can use your notes, and you can work with your group. Just make sure that you guys try each problem so that you're ready for the CFA, which you guys will be taking on Wednesday and finishing on Thursday. So looking at number 1, it says determine which function has a greater rate of change. Rate of change we've talked about. It's the same thing as slope. And we have 3 different parts, A, B, and C. This is not a multiple choice problem. Some of you guys on the test, on the pre-CFA, just circled one that wasn't the question. For each one, you have to first determine what the rate of change is, or the slope, and then determine which one has the greater rate of change or the greater slope. Looking at option A, we have an equation, 3y equals negative 6x plus 18, but there's something different about it. It's not in slope-intercept form because of this 3. Usually when it's just the equation, it's y equals y by itself, not anything in front of it. So I'm going to give you guys an example of how you would determine the rate of change for this one, and then you guys can try it. So let's say that our equation were 4y equals 8x minus 12. Usually our equations look like this, where the number in front of x is the slope, which is what we're looking for, and then the number after is the y-intercept. So we want this equation to start like this one, which means we need to get rid of this 4. Now, think of this as an equation. Right now, y is being multiplied by 4. To get rid of it, we do the opposite. Opposite of multiplying by 4 is dividing by 4. So what we do to one side, we need to do to the other side. Notice that I underlined everything on the right side, meaning I have to divide the whole thing by 4. This goes away. We're left with y equals 8 divided by 4 is 2, minus 12 divided by 4 is 3. So now we can see what the slope and the y-intercept are. So looking at problem A, where you have 3y equals negative 6x plus 18. Try this one on your paper. Get rid of that 3. And then find out what the rate of change is. Go ahead and try it. Alright, so you should have divided both sides by 3. And got y equals -6 divided by +3, -2. +18 divided by 3, +6. And the slope for this one is going to be -2. So on your worksheet, you should have that work done. Remember, you need to show your work. The slope for this one is -2. So show your work here and then circle the slope. For option B, to find the slope, we're going to use our formula. Change in y divided by change in x, which means you have to pick 2 points. Find the change in y, the change in x. If you can divide, go ahead and try it. Alright, so I'm going to pick 2 points. The easiest ones to use are the smaller numbers, so I'm going to pick this one and this one. My change in y from 5 to 10 is +5. From 0 to 1 is +1, which means that my slope is +5. So right now, we're determining which slope is greater. We've got -2, +5. Positive slopes are always greater. So right now, B is our greater slope. We have one more option though, which is looking at the graph. For this one, it can be a little difficult, especially when you can't see the squares. But I see that my graph on the y-axis crosses right in between the 4 and the 6, which means that this is a 5. And then I'm going to go ahead and use 4. And it lands right in between 8 and 10, which means that that is a 9. We're going to use the same formula, change in y over change in x. Our change in the y, which is here, going from 5 up to 9 is up 4. And then starting from 0 and going to 4 is also right 4 is +4. 4 divided by 4 is 1. So now knowing our 3 slopes, you're either going to circle A, B, or C, which one had the greater slope. For problem number 2, you guys can do that on your own. We've gone over these problems in our notes, identifying whether it's linear or nonlinear. The easiest one to look at is the graph, because it shows you what it looks like. Remember, linear means a straight line. There can be more than one correct answer. When you're looking at equations, remember you don't want any exponents. And looking at your tables, you want to make sure that you can get the slope and that it works for each one. So for example, we're going to check D. Using our formula, I'm going to pick the first 2 points. My change in y from 5 to 17 is plus 12. And my change in x from 1 to 5 is a plus 4, which means our slope is 3. So the equation for this one would be y equals 3x, and then I need my y-intercept. So to get the y-intercept when there's no 0, you pick any. I'm going to use the first one. If I plug in 1 for x, I should get 5 for y. So 3 times 1 is 3, and then I need to add 2 to get to 5. So if this table is linear, then it should work every point plugging it into this equation. So I know it works for 1 and 5 because that's the one I used to make it. So we're going to try the second one. 5 and 17. So if I plug in 5 here, I should get 17 for y. So now 3 times 5 is 15, plus 2 gives me 17. That one works as well. Now I'm going to try the last one. Plugging in 7 for x, my answer should come out to 23. So 3 times 7 is 21. 21 plus 2 gives me 23. So this one is linear. This should be one of your answers. So you're going to do this same thing with table for option B to check if that one is linear. Remember the equations, you're checking to see which one doesn't have an exponent, and for the graph, you're checking to see if it gives you a straight line. For number 3, it says create your own graphic example of a relationship that is not a linear function and explain why it is not. So you have to draw on here something that is not a linear function. Your graphs will look different because all of you guys will come up with different ones. It's just come up with something that is not a linear function and then explain why. For number 4, we have 3 different people here. It says you and your friends are arguing about who can ride their bike the fastest. You all decide to put this to the test and set a course for as long and far on a deserted street. Use the table to determine who has the fastest speed. Why? So to find speed for number 4, you guys are going to use the formula for speed, which is distance divided by time. So for AVAR, what you would do is divide the 500 yards by 25 minutes to get AVAR speed in yards per minute. So you would do 500 divided by 25, and then you would get AVAR speed in yards per minute. And then you do the same thing for Isaiah and for Jesus. For problem number 5, it says which of these is a point on the graph of the function y equals negative x squared plus 4. Select all that apply. So what you guys are doing here is if these points are on this function, then that means if you plug in this for x and this for y, it should work in the equation. So I'm going to try the first one and the second one, and then you guys try the rest. So the equation is y equals negative x squared plus 4. This is our function. Our first option is 1, 3. So this is the x, this is the y. So here I'm gonna put in 3 for y. Negative, remember whenever you plug in, you use parentheses. X is 1 now. So all I did was replace the y and the x. So we're gonna check to see if this is true. So exponents comes first. 1 times 1 is 1. Bring down the negative and the plus 4. I wanna make sure that I get 3 as my answer. Negative 1 plus 4 gives me positive 3. And this one works. So A would be one of my answers. Next one is negative 2 comma 7. So again, I'm going to plug in this for x, this for y. So now I have 7 equals negative parentheses. For my x, I'm going to plug in negative 2. And remember, I want to get 7 as my answer. Exponents comes first. Negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4. Bring down the negative. I've got negative 4 plus 4. This gives me 0, not 7. So this is not part of the function. So B is not part of the answer. And you guys are going to try that with C, D, and E. For part 6, you're just writing the equation in which the y-intercept is greater than that of the one represented on the table. So first come up with the equation for the table, and then make up your own equation where the y-intercept is a bigger number than the equation for the table. So I would recommend that you write down the equation for the table that you get right here, and then you have to make another equation that has the y-intercept, which is the number that's right here, bigger here. Number 7 is just which ones are true. Select 3. And it's talking about linear and nonlinear. You're looking at equations. Again, make sure that you're looking at the exponents. For number 8, the graph of a function contains the points 3, 8, and 6, 12. A, find a point that lies on the same line. So what you want to do for this one is write an equation that'll give you these points, and then just pick another point that lies on the same line. Now you guys haven't done it looking like this before, but what you can do is change these into a table. So we've got 3 and 8, 6 and 12. 2 points is all you need to write the equation of a line. Use the formula. Change in y over change in x. And these are the only two that you're going to have to use. So change in y from 8 to 12 is plus 4. From 3 to 6 is plus 3. So the slope for this one is going to be 4 over 3. You can leave it as a fraction. If you change it into a decimal, you're going to get 1.3333 repeating. So it's better to leave it as a fraction. Now we have to find out the y-intercept. So from here, we're going to use either 3, 8 or 6, 12. I'm going to use the top one, 3, 8. I'm going to plug them in. So if I plug in 3 for x, I want 8 as my answer here for y. To multiply a fraction with 3, I gotta put a 1 underneath. 4 times 3 is 12. 3 times 1 is 3, and this just gives me 4. So multiplying this by 3 gives me 4. I need to add how much to get 8? So if I have 4, I need to add 4. So this is my equation. Y equals 4 over 3x plus 4. I need to find another point that lies on the same line. So it can be any point. Remember, a line is made of an infinite amount of points. You want to pick an x that is a multiple of 3 because you're going to have to divide by 3 because of this one. So we've already used 3 and 6. The next one we would use could be 9. So on this first line, we're going to put 9. So all we have to do is plug in 9, multiply, add 4, and then we get our y. So I'm going to do that right here. Y equals 4 over 3. I'm going to plug in 9 for x. And I'm checking to see what I get for y. I'm going to put that 1 underneath. 4 times 9 is 36. 3 times 1 is 3. 36 over 3 becomes 12. And 12 plus 4 is 16. That means that my pair for 9 is 16. Find another point that makes the relation nonlinear. So remember when we were doing functions, if it's a function or not a function, if we had one repeating, it had to have the same y value, but we want this to be nonlinear or not a function. So we can repeat one of these. For example, I can put 3 again, but instead of giving it that 8 that it needs, we can give it any other number. So right here, you can put any number except for 8. All right, so the rest of the problems on the worksheet are your classwork. You can use your notes. You can work with people in your group. And you can use the calculators. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask the sub. And good luck on the CFA.